We're back again with the 2011 Buick Lacrosse CXL 2.4 liter Ecotec engine. I was driving along and giving it some gas up a slight hill, and all of a sudden my cluster gauge told me that it went into reduced power. So I opened it up, took a look. I was assuming maybe a low oil situation, but then when I realized this, which is my high pressure fuel pump, this was jackhammering back and forth, which meant that these bolts, there's two of them on this, these bolt heads snapped off. One is still inside the engine, one I was able to extract in the field, but I did end up stealing a bolt from my valve cover and allowing myself to put at least one bolt in here, but since this does have a lot of spring pressure against it, that was just going to end up snapping this bolt head off, so I needed something that I had to keep this pressed against the engine. Now, luckily enough, they have this cage that ordinarily would have some sort of vibration dampening or protection foam around it. I took that off, and since it's a heavy-duty bracket, it's got a bolt here, and a bolt on a stud back here, I figured I could wedge something in here to sandwich that against the engine so I can make it home. And so what I had on hand was one of these little tire plug kit handles you remount the hole with. Well, that just so happened to be perfectly sized to press against the fuel pump, and in tandem with this bracket, I was able to just wedge it up against the engine. And that got me home. I didn't take the highway, but I, babied it and got it to where I needed to go, and it ran just quite fine. So now I'm working on it today, and I intend on, since this does have 248,000 miles on it, I guess that's the higher end of a high pressure fuel pump. So I will be replacing this. Now in stores, it'll cost you about $400. Online, you can get a genuine GM as well for about $200 from Amazon. But in a pinch, I'm going to have to pay for the expensive one in store to get this thing up and running. The trouble now I'm going to have is this bolt is fine. These threads are great. That one over there, the snapped off bolt is slightly recessed into the casting. So once I remove everything here, I'm going to probably take a Dremel disc and precision cut a slot. It will bore a little bit into the aluminum casting, but once I touch off on that bolt, hopefully it creates a slot that I can get a small screwdriver in, unscrew it, since it shouldn't be seized in there at all. They're generally loose once you have the heads broken off. So that's where I'm going to be going for here. I did smell down inside here, and I do detect a little bit of a gasoline smell. It's not conclusive yet to determine whether or not it's, leaking past the diaphragm inside there and into my crankcase. But because of the fact that it is so old, and I don't want to take any risks of doing my oil change now, which it is due for one, wasting all that because it's going to get diluted with the fuel. I don't want to play that game. So I will replace this just as a precaution. I'll also do an oil change, and then we'll see if that fixes it. I probably still will install something back here to keep pressure on it. I mean, I don't know if that's physically going to alleviate the fact that the cam's pushing the thing constantly, but I guess maybe it would help prevent any strain on there, but I don't know if that's necessary. But yeah, we'll go from there. I'll take some more videos as we replace this, because I don't see much content for this particular replacement online, so hopefully this will help people out, whether or not you're doing a repair like I am, or just simply replacing it. I'm only going to kind of brief through the disassembly of this. A lot of it is pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. But obviously, since we're going to be working with something that may be related to fuel, and if you touch off it, we'll disconnect the battery terminals. And then, as far as getting to the pump, you pry up these little deals, take that off that hose, get that separated, get this radiator return line kind of up and out of the way, and then just moving this kind of out of the way. Now you want to be careful with this, it's plastic, don't go cranking on it, go crazy. So you can unplug it from here. It's got a lot of play. got rubber down there, so it kind of moves easily out of the way. I wouldn't be too worried about that. Just be careful with it, especially if you're shutting the hood and whatnot. So once we got all that stuff out of the way, then we'll start by doing this bolt and that bolt. And then there's a bolt on a stud back here, and that will remove this cage. That will expose, and you'll see this later, that will expose the entire high pressure fuel pump. And that only has one bolt and another bolt. In my case, it only has one bolt. But yeah, and then we'll work on removing the fuel lines, which there'll be a screw on one in the bottom. And then there's this one here that either can be taken off here or here, regardless. This bolt here holds this little regulator on. You don't really need to move that out of the way, but if you have difficulty with this, you might need to. But we'll go from there. Alright, so we're back now. As you see, I just connected the batteries, taking the opportunity to soak it, some of the little corrosion off there. But here is the high pressure fuel pump. You can see here that one of the bolts are missing. This is a temporary bolt. This was the cage that was over it. And that was pretty convenient for me, considering the fact that I was able to pretty much take this guy, put it through that hole. It was almost like it was meant to be. It's perfect shape. And it held this pressure up against here because this wants to torque this way. And it's going to snap the bolt off. So if one bolt goes off, pretty much the other bolt's going to go. And they used these tiny little, I don't know if that's like a M6 bolts. And that's kind of an issue because, including the fact that I've had the same issue with my timing chain, that they used the bolts like this, but they had a shoulder on them. So there was a shoulder and then the tiny gauge bolt. And basically, as that timing chain keeps moving, vibrating, and everything, it just worked its way out, and it ovaled the hole in my engine. So that would have been either aluminum welding, repair, drill tap a new hole or whatever. And it's a whole story, but timing chain was terrible, so I ended up actually designing my own. I actually drilled and tapped a new bolt to replace those inferior bolts. But that's a different story. Another story too, and you'll probably see my other video depending on if this one gets posted first or that one, but I made a little bracket down here. That's not an OEM part. It's like a little triangular bracket. And the trouble was, you got this little guide bolt plug pin thing for the guide chain, for the plastic chain guide in there. And that was one of those inferior bolts at the shoulder. And so the aftermarket is a large plug deal that goes into the valve cover or the side cover. But that worked for a while until the side cover, since it only had like maybe 4 or 5 threads on there, that eventually wobbled out. And so I had that thing backing out, oil spewing, and obviously not holding my chain guide in place. So I made this little custom bracket, and you can check out that video of me, going through the process of not only designing it, but then also implementing it. That actually worked out really well. So, but back to this project. We have this here, so I'm going to need to remove this entirely off of here. I have a new one ready to pick up at the store. But before I get anywhere, I need to extract this recessed piece of the bolt. So I'm going to start removing this, and then I'll return back and I'll show you that bolt I need to take care of. Alright, so we're working on getting the pump removed. I wanted to note that I did take this fuel regulator and feed line off. So it's just a 10mm bolt right here, and that's for this bracket. And I used the fuel line removal tool on this. So you have to kind of slip on there and give it a little pressure. There's these little tabs in here that you have to depress, and then you can kind of just pull it off. And then, so it doesn't leak, I kind of put it up here so it's the highest point. And leak it anywhere. A little bit, a few drops will have it, but just be sure that you get it kind of in a position where you're good to go. But yeah, we'll finish removing this back. Let's do it by hand. But this is kind of the state in which I found it when I initially experienced failure. It was pretty much gapped. Now I don't have the gasket in here because I wanted to allow my bolts, if I could get that one to bite, to even that slightest bit would help. So I didn't put the gasket back in just yet, but the new pump will come with gasket, will come with new bolts, so I don't have to source those parts individually. One of the benefits of having having the whole kit. But I do have to remove this now. From what I've read, people say to replace this, this feed line, this little intermediate feed line, pressure line. Yes, it's $50, so it's not terrible for peace of mind. But for me, I don't see a reason why I can't reuse it. I'm willing to take that chance. But for you or whoever who just wants full reliability, you could just replace this as well. It looks pretty easy to get access to. So I just need to get a wrench on there, crack that thing loose, then this whole thing will come out. Alright, so I did crack this loose. Unscrew it the rest of the way. A little bit of fuel will leak out. But it's kind of like what we're looking at. It looks like it must have some sort of blue sealant on the threads there. But yeah, I don't know if I need to necessarily apply. I mean, it's going to seal. Let's put it back on. Makes sense. Alright, so this little guy, let's add some out. Alright, so here's the fuel pump, high pressure fuel pump, expensive little bastard. But you can see that it's got a little bit of blackness on it, tarnish, not bad. You know, stays relatively clean. But we'll definitely replace that, set it on the dirty ground. And then there, we have what's inside. But the issue I have is this little bolt inside here. So he's pretty much recessed. It's the rest of a bolt. It looks like it's going to be a bitch. So I'm going to try and kind of pick at it, see if I can get anything to rotate just as is, now that I have everything clear out of the way. I can even use the old piece of the bolt in case it wants to interlock with the, you know, some of the broken little notches. So I'm going to try that out. This one's clean. So that one's reusable. Worst case scenario, I could drill both these out a little bit bigger, tap them, really good position to be able to do my hand. And then I could put some heavier bolts on it, but I think with the new bolts and everything, we're going to be fine. But first I really need to get that out of there. Worst case scenario, I don't know if there's any orientation issues with this, whether or not it's this way or that way. So I mean, hypothetically, I could technically offset. Yeah. I could technically offset it off to the side. Well, that fuel line kind of has a problem. And that would have to be modified. But I was going to say technically, yeah, because I could almost bend that without kinking. And I could go just slightly off to the side and drill and tap my own holes. That could work. Like I could almost get it in that position. Just a little bit of a clockwise turn. And then I would just drill and tap my own holes. That could work. I don't want to do that, but if I was in a pinch, I could do it. Not really sure if this casting is that portion, if that's removable. I don't think it is. So that would be terrible to have to buy a whole new engine basically. But we're not doing that. So I'm going to clean this up and I'm going to start seeing if I can extract that bolt. Alright, so we got it all cleaned up, and I attempted to just simply try and see if I can get a grip on that with the old bolt and work it out, but that thing's it's not coming out right now. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to use the Dremel, I'm going to use a cutting wheel, and preferably cut as deep as I can. That's pretty deep in there, but I'm going to cut as deep as I can into there, and then hopefully cut a channel into it. And then get a little screwdriver on there and try and back it out. It's a risk, but it's gonna, you know, I've done crazier things. So, but in order to get the right angle with my Dremel, I'm gonna remove this guy out of here. And then I'll probably remove the battery. And I don't get the best angle on it. Just touch it up there. Best angle, because I don't want to necessarily go as close as that, because I want to be as straight up and down as possible to achieve the best results. So I'm going to remove the battery here, and I'm going to get this thing plugged in, put a cutting wheel on it, and then cross my fingers. Alright, so this angle is going to give us the best option without the battery in there. So I'll give that a shot. Alright, power up the generator here. It's a little overkill for a Grimmel, but it's convenient. Alright, so that's our mission. Cut a slot in that broken bolt. Don't fuck up. Alright, see if I can get an angle on it while I'm at it, so you guys can see what's up. Alright, I think that might work. If it moves out of the way, so be it. I tried. I think we are touching it, but I don't know if it's deep enough. Let's take a look at it, see where we're at. I mean, there's a little bit of a notch, so maybe I'll get a screwdriver on there. Okay, there is a little bit of a notch. I don't know if it's too much, if it's enough. So I think we are in fact getting there. So I'm going to continue going. I might even preemptively replace my Dremel disc just to get a deeper shot in there, but looks like we're angled right. Yeah, let's go a little deeper. Alright, let's see here. Might get a better screwdriver than this one, so I'll be right back. And I'm back. Let's see if I can get anything on here. Looks like it's got a good bite. I think we got movement. I think it's actually working. Can you believe it? Check that out. Are we getting this on tape? You love it when plans work. So that little bastard was in there. I only went down, so much into there. So I mean, there's still a good amount of thread that should be able to work for me. I mean, hypothetically, I could technically fill that with something and then drill and tap so that you kind of have more threads, but I really don't think I'm going to need it. So that's a good thing. Alright, just to see inside there. That's what we're dealing with. Pretty accurate, if I say so myself. Not bad. Alright, next step would be clean this up a little bit more because of the shavings. Get the new pump, slap that thing in there, put it all together, and wait for the next problem. So, there we go. Alright, so we have a new GM fuel pump here. Just picked it up from the store. We're ready on installing it. There it is, sitting right in there. Nice and shiny, comes with the bolts, comes with the gasket. And yeah, so we're going to throw that on in. And first I'll probably blow out these holes just for good measure. And then I'll show you the next part. Okay, so we have the pump dry fitted here, loosely fitted. And we'll start by incrementally walking it onto the engine here. Do a few here, do a few here. Because there is some spring pressure on there, so we want to make sure that it's evenly seated That Fox one way or another. Okay, so now these are snug, and we will torque these down to 18 foot-pounds, which I have an inch-pound one, so that's 216 inch-pounds. Torque there. Torque there. Torque there. Alright, so it looks like we're torqued. Should be good. Now we'll just put the fuel line back on, attach that fuel line, reassemble all the stuff, and fire it up. Okay, so it looks like we have everything buttoned up. But I don't know if I forgot anything, but I'm pretty sure it's got everything. The bottom fuel line, we have the top fuel line, cage back on, the foam. I was going to leave this foam out just so I can monitor and see if there's any leaks, but I'd imagine that would be evident if there was. Yeah, so we're going to fire it up and see what happens. It might run like shit because there's air in the fuel line, but who knows? Alright. No immediate explosion. I'll be doing the oil change next. But I figured maybe I could take it for a test run. Let it idle here for a little bit. Yeah, we'll let it idle and then we'll take it for a test run. Alright, we are back from the test drive. And it performed well. Seems to be idling well. I haven't taken it up onto highways yet, but I'm going to open the hood now and see if there's any obvious issues that we might be having. But so far so good. Looks like it's still here. Doesn't seem to be moving. I don't think it looks like there's any leaks or anything. I don't smell it. So, it'll be alright. Next step is going to be replacing our front shock. But first thing I want to do is I want to go bring this to a self-wash and get it all cleaned up because something's been causing an oil leak around here. And I intend on sorting that out. Maybe it's probably the camshaft seal. I've already replaced that before, but could be it again. All right.